Hi, I'm Taylor Smurl, and this is Cocktails and Cosplay. You might know who I'm cosplaying today because it's on my chest. Before I get into literally anything about this episode, there's going to be spoilers. This episode format itself is going to be a spoiler. So, thanks for coming, but if you don't want any spoilers about the new Loki show, just leave now. I'll give you a little buffer to get out of here. This is like all of our favorite Chris's. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine. That's a Chris too, right? I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Okay, great. If you're still here, you're okay with spoilers. As you know, on the new Loki show, Loki broke the timeline, so that means there's a whole bunch of Lokis just free roaming, and I thought that would be a great opportunity to get some assistance for me on this episode today. I have a whole ass other Loki to help me out. Please welcome me.
Hello. I am also Loki.
Yeah. This is Mx Macabre.
Yes. Mx Macabre.
Yes. Mx is a cosplayer, performer. Tell us about yourself, Mx.
I am a cosplayer. I am a cosplay burlesque performer. I am a drag performer. I am a classic burlesque performer. I'm an MC. I also do vaudeville performances, and I am a professional clown. Just a few things.
That's a lot.
I'm also a Loki.
And
as
a
you
Loki.
can see, I'm Loki, Agent of Asgard.
You are like a extreme Loki, though. You know more about Loki than I think Loki himself.
Probably. I think the cool kids call that hyperfixation.
Okay, yeah. Well, but it's very, very timely hyperfixation.
It is a timely hyperfixation.
Yeah.
It's in the cultural zeitgeist, if you will.
Yes. And you are cosplaying specifically...
Yes. This is Loki, Agent of Asgard,
Okay.
from the Al Ewing comic, although he also shows up before that a little bit in Young Avengers by Kieran Gillen.
All right. The draw of this episode is the new show on Disney, but I want to talk a bit about where Loki comes from, because Loki has a long history, not just in comics, not just in the MCU, but like before all that.
Yes.
Comes from Norse mythology.
Yes. So Loki in Norse mythology is such an interesting figure because he is the cause of and solution to most of the problems in the Poetic Edda. So most stories of the Poetic Edda, which is where in Norse mythology most of the tales come from, Loki both causes all of the disasters, but he also tends to fix them. So,
I relate to that
yes.
personally. That's my life.
So you'll have like, oh no, Thor's hammer was stolen by giants that Loki definitely didn't help assist. How will we get it back? Oh, I know, we'll dress Thor up as Freya and send him to be the bride of the giant, and that will definitely get the hammer back. This is a great plan. We'll put Thor in drag. And then it works.
He also shapeshifts a lot, like all over the place. Right?
Oh,
like
yes.
he's a
That's
salmon,
everyone's favorite. That's everyone's favorite.
The
yes.
horse.
Yes.
He's
a mare. He's very specifically a female horse.
right.
Because Odin hired a giant again with a big magic horse to build a wall, and if he built the wall really fast, Odin didn't have to pay him. And so Loki was like, oh, I know how to distract the horse. I'll turn into a very sexy lady horse.
Which goes almost too well, right?
It goes so well that Odin gets a brand new steed called Sleipnir, which is Loki's 8-legged horse baby. That's everyone's favorite. Everyone loves, oh, Loki turned into a horse and hooked up with another horse.
I like the 8-legged part. It's just kind of thrown in there. Like,
yeah, 8-legged horse, skittering.
Now, one thing that when I was reading about like the origins of Loki, like the name Loki, sort of the etymology of it, kind of comes back to this idea that he's like the maker of knots, and like it's a word that can be used to describe like spiders sometimes.
Yes.
So is that where we get is that why the horse has 8 legs?
I don't know the etymology of that specifically. Depending on which Scandinavian language, Loki actually literally means salmon. That's where one of the Scandinavian words for dragon comes from. And please forgive me, I am forgetting which specific language. I want to say it's Finnish. It's like Loki Harma or something. It's literally like salmon snake is a dragon. But I don't know. Loki's whole thing is obfuscation and secrets and magic and mystery. But then at the same time, he's kind of a goober. Like one of the poetic
Great
Edda
way of
stories,
putting it.
yeah, and this carries over when we get to the comics. This carries over to the comics where he's at once this like nefarious villain, but he's also kind of an oaf. Like one of my favorite Loki tales is to amuse everyone, he ties his balls to a goat. That's a
Wait, that was the horse story, the one everybody knows.
yeah.
I've never heard that.
We're talking about the horse story, but one time Loki tied his testicles to a goat. You can look
For
that up.
funsies?
Look it up, kids. For funsies. He also, in the Locusena, which is my favorite story, he rolls up to a dinner party and just reads everyone for filth. He literally kicks the door in and he's like, "Oh, Loki's here. Your dress is terrible.
This is amazing.
Your makeup's terrible." Like, he just rolls up. That's Loki.
Just does what he wants.
Loki does what he wants, and that's exactly how it translates to the comics, too.
Yeah. I think there is a panel that's I do what I want. Quite literally.
That's actually I do what I want, Thor. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a fan edit or a real thing, but he really does stand at a fountain. So in the comics, he stands at a fountain and he's dangling a fish over the fountain just to annoy the fish. This is a real decision that Marvel made to be like, oh, I know how to show Loki being evil. He will hold a fish over a fountain in Central Park and be like, "Hey, you're so close to the water, but you can't go in."
What era of comics is that from?
So that is the Walt Simonson era of like the 80s comics, and that's where we get all that great stuff like Frog Thor.
Okay.
It's kind of like a golden era of ludicrous Thor comics. is that beautiful Simonson era?
Well, and of course, I mean, so we have classic Norse Loki.
Yeah.
Causes. I mean, I don't even know if that's mischief tying your balls to a goat. That's just, it's just something else entirely. Then we get like the birth of Loki in the MCU. What happens like 40s? We get like a version of a Loki, but then the real Loki hits in like the 60s.
60s to 80s is, I would say, that peak evil Loki. Oh, I will rule Midgard. Why? I'm just evil. Like, that's just kind of that peak era of Loki. Because the 40s Loki, it's still also like, we still have that weird Thor, like, is he Thor? Is he a doctor that turns into Thor? Which is also something more toward the 60s. But
Thor was a doctor?
Oh, Thor is a heart surgeon named Donald Blake, and Jane Foster was originally a nurse.
I didn't know this.
Yes, Donald Blake, so which is also referenced in the movie Thor when you see his fake ID. His name is Donald Blake.
Oh, that's so funny.
And very rarely do the comics, more modern, reference that perfectly, because I don't want to get deep divey, but it splits off into a whole character named Thunderstrike, and we're not going to talk about that, or my friend will find me on the internet and beat me up for loving Thunderstrike.
That's a bad.
That's a Thor variant.
You're watching this.
So if you're interested in Thor variants, let me tell you, you can look up Thunderstrike.
Oh wow.
And Beta Ray Bill. Anyway,
I'm so impressed with these like you are encyclopedic. It's fantastic. So we have the comics, the comic version of Loki in more modern times. I mean, has kind of had that like working with the heroes, working against the heroes, working on his own agenda. But I feel like it's gotten a little bit more expansive recently, yeah? One
of the things that I love about the more modern comics, and this is something that Agent of Asgard, but also Journey into Mystery by Kieran Gillen, which is where Kid Loki comes from, without having to rehash everything. Long story short, old Loki, classic Loki, if you will, dies, sacrifices himself to save Asgard, truly dies, he's dead. He is reincarnated as Kid Loki, who is his own character trying to be good. But for some reason, he decided it was a good idea to listen to this magpie that has the spirit of old Loki in it. I don't know why he did this. Why would you listen to another Loki?
I'd listen to a bird if you talked to me.
Sure. So long story short, then, Kid Loki has to die, and the spirit of old Loki kind of infuses himself into Kid Loki. This is so much. I know.
Loki murders a child?
Essentially, yeah. And then that kid spirit follows him behind screaming, "I am the crime that will not be forgiven."
Oh,
it's great.
Jesus.
He's haunted by his own sins. So, but in Agent of Asgard, his nemesis, spoiler for Agent of Asgard, his nemesis is himself. It's King Loki. It's old Loki. It's like a future version of himself. It's literally him from the future who is trying to sway him to evil, because the whole point of this arc of Loki is you have the one Loki, King Loki, who feels trapped in He tries to do good. He tries to better himself, but everyone still says, "Oh, Loki, I almost believed you with your silver tongue. You know, I almost forgot that you're the god of lies." Like, characters don't let him change. And the whole point of Agent of Asgard, and this is something we'll get to with the show, is allowing Loki to change. And that's why I love Agent of Asgard, because the whole thing is about the ego death, sense of self, in finding the space between who you're meant to be, who people think you are, and who you want to be.
That is some heavy stuff. I feel like we need a drink. I want to continue this conversation, but I think this is where the drink comes in, right?
Well, I did mention ego death, so you definitely, you need some booze for that.
I find that a very strong cocktail happens to kill my ego. Everything else that goes on up here, but the ego goes with it. So let's get that underway. As we mentioned, in the new Loki TV show, you have all these Loki variants that are running amok. So kind of in honor of that, for this cocktail, I don't know how to put this delicately. I pulled all the green shit from my shelf, and we're gonna make a drink out of it. So we're gonna base the spirit. The one non-green thing we have is aquavit. This makes some sense thematically,
Absolutely.
Right?
Official spirit of Scandinavian black metal.
There you go. Oh yeah.
No, I don't know that. I just know a lot of bands drink it.
Well, now to get to our green stuff. We're gonna bring in obviously some citrus. We've got lime juice. That's obvious. We've got green chartreuse.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. We've got midori.
Shout out to my partner who loves midori.
Yeah. Classic Japanese melon liqueur. It was like, how do you like your Loki? Classic or trash? We're going to do both. Actually, speaking of trash, I've also got some Besk. So Besk is, this is Leatherby's Besk. They used to call it malort. It is essentially malort, but they lost that court battle against Jepsen. So, but with the Besk, it's a little bit more intense for this drink, and it's got a little bit more of a green color. So, you know, has
that bitterness of any good Loki's got to bring some bitterness.
Oh yeah, it's been described as tasting like 1,000 grapefruits on fire that hate you. And yeah. I feel like that's
a pivotal part of like a Loki soul.
Yeah.
That's the self-loathing sprinkled in.
This is what we're going to rinse our glasses with. I think that is a good symbolism moment. So we're going to try, these are some aggressive flavors. This is like every one of these elements wants to take over a drink, and we're going to try to make them all sit in harmony in one drink.
Loki Lofison is nothing if not a big personality.
Here you go. So the structure we're gonna loosely play with here is a bit of a last word, which I think you're a fan
That is
of.
my absolute favorite gin drink.
Yeah. I think it's what it also, I think just thematically also fits. So I'm gonna build two at once, so we don't have to fight over the same cocktail. There's multiple timelines here. It's fine. We can make two drinks. But I will tell you the measurements as if you're making one drink. So if you're following along at home. So we're going to start. I feel like there's a lot of sweet here, so we're going to need a lot of acid to balance that off. I'm going to use an ounce of lime juice. So for our base spirit, we're going to do an ounce. So for our green chartreuse, we're going to do a 3/4 ounce. I feel like green chartreuse is what Loki would want to be portrayed as.
If I had to describe, especially the specific Loki that I'm dressed as, he sits there with a glass of green chartreuse, but he's taking sips of midori under the table.
There you go.
You know what I mean? He's telling everyone that he's listening to Kate Bush, but he's really listening to Taylor Swift.
I love your read on Loki. All right. So for a midori, we're going to do a 1/2 ounce. So we want to get a little bit of that melon flavor. We want to get enough sweetness, but not too much. Okay, so that's the cocktail in the shaker. I'm just going to do a quick rinse. Just the tiniest. Use sparingly.
Whisper.
Yes. Just a little bit of just. All right, we're going to ice up our tin and shake it up. I usually shake this way, but I feel like that's good.
I can just lean.
I can move. Oh, we're gonna come right at the audience with this. Ooh. how we did. Some for you.
So I'll tell you a fun Loki fact while you pour them.
Please.
That we're actually cosplaying the same Loki.
Oh, really?
That in the comics, this Loki goes on to be Vote Loki, which is, I think, one of the funniest Loki comics and Loki storylines that just has very strange art.
So in that story, from what I understand, he runs for president. He loses, but the whole point was that the other guy won, right?
Yes.
Like he was working a deal with him.
Sort of. Let us not spoil. But it's very much an excellent commentary on the U.S. political system. Not as good as when the demon Etrigan ran for president in 1992.
Not as good. I like that. Just throw that out like I'm in history class. Not as good as when this demon ran. I don't know that storyline. Sounds great.
That's the demon that's Etrigan, Jason Blood, ran for president in 1992, which I think is an extremely good political commentary. But Vote Loki has some real good shots at the political climate of the time.
I was going to say, when did Vote Loki come out?
I can't recall exactly. I want to say 2015, 2016.
Oh, so it's...
something like that. 2015, 2016, I want to say.
So it's commentary.
Yes, it is commentary.
All right. So I'm really excited about the garnish we're putting on these drinks. We did a little expelled grapefruit over there just for the flavor, but the garnish is... Here you go. I'll give you yours.
I'm very excited.
So we've got little helms. Mix helped me figure out the shape for it because I kept cutting something that looked like Wanda's, like a Scarlet Witch's helm.
Diadem.
Yeah.
I'm very particular. So these are actually a diadem. They're not a helmet, and they're a diadem. I'm the pedantic Loki variant.
That's great. I'm clearly the clueless bartender Loki variant, which that's fine. There's room for both.
We
of
need
us.
those. I did really this beautiful.
I did really like that he got totally wasted in the new series.
I love that.
Right?
Him singing just spoke to my very soul.
Oh my God.
Spoke to my absolute soul.
Especially like if I had just come off a rewatch of everything that he'd appeared in the MCU, and it's a character progression. I think that they did a good job with it, but like I also feel like it's more true to the character. We'll get into it when we talk about the show, but like that's the Loki that I felt like I related to. Like I know I'm the middle child. I got I'm banked by like a doctor and a future lawyer. Like, what do you do, Taylor? So I relate hard to just a little bit like kind of messes things up sometimes, Loki. Kind of a little too drunk sometimes, Loki. That's like I feel that.
It's glorious purpose. Oh no.
Oh no. Speaking of glorious purpose, I thought that was a great name for this drink. Oh,
it's okay. I'll fish it out.
That's all right.
No one will know other than our viewers.
This is how I've solved this problem. I'm keeping it all over my fingers.
I went to charm school. I'm poised.
Here we go. Here are our little Loki variant cocktails. Well, cheers.
Skull. Oh, that's right. What's a Loki if not a little bit of a messed up? I really liked it.
There's a lot, but I think it balances out pretty good.
Like I said, he's a big personality. He's a lot of flavor. It's a lot of flavor. It's a lot of personality.
There's a lot of like herbaceousness from the aquavit and the chartreuse, but I do think that a little bit of melon liqueur is really doing the lion's share of work there, sweeten it up, and Basque is just kind of wrapping it gently, not being too angry in the glass.
It makes me think of back in the show. Is this a blanket? What is this?
This is, yes.
Loki makes a very scratchy blanket to put around himself and Sylvie.
Thinks it's a cape.
Yeah, she's like, what is this? You call that a garnish?
It's kind of sad that he doesn't really like. I don't know what a warm blanket is.
See, thank you.
How close
thank
I got.
you for understanding that, because I have a lot of feelings on the dissonance between Loki in the MCU, especially is I'm raised as a prince. I deserve wonderful things. You know, I'm born to rule. I'm so regal. Loki needs a hug. Loki needs to be tucked into a comfy bed and have 10 kittens put on top of him. And that's something I really loved in Ragnarok. I just got a lot of vibes of like, he rolled up to that party palace on Sakaar 2 weeks before Thor did. What did he do to curry the Grandmaster's favor? What did he do? I assume it involved a lot of lounging upon supple pillows and whatnot.
Yeah, I felt like such a child when I saw somebody say, like, I mean, Ragnarok is the gayest MCU movie. Like, Loki literally had a sugar daddy, and
yes.
I felt like I was like, oh my God.
I have a burlesque act about that, actually.
I never read it that way, but it totally makes sense.
On,
I'm just an innocent baby, apparently. I mean,
when they all have that look, they're all looking at one another, and it's like, when you know them, and Jeff Goldblum and Grandmaster has that, like...
I mean, if you had the opportunity to be taken care of by...
He's the Grandmaster.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Love and Thunder.
I think it's gonna. I mean, I hope it's not. I hope it. I trust the team that's making it.
I trust the team, and I trust that. I think my boy Beta Ray Bill is rolling up in there. So if you don't know, or for those who don't know, Beta Ray Bill is to me the only worthy Thor. He's a large lizard horse alien who wields Mjolnir. Also, it's just Natalie. How good must the script be that Natalie Portman came back?
Yeah,
she has sick guns now.
She looks great. The idea that somebody dumped Thor was great.
Love it.
That entire scene between Thor and Loki, and then Doctor Strange comes in.
We knew you're not a witch. Why are you dressed like one? I've been falling for 30 minutes.
Well, so I think maybe we are in agreement that the Loki series is a bit of a pinnacle presentation for Loki in the MCU.
Yes,
so I'm
absolutely.
curious what because you're a fan of the comics.
Very much so.
You have every reason to come in and be judgmental about this stuff. You love the property. What did you think worked? Tell me your feelings about the show. We're not gonna get if we're a brief breakdown. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Can I give a synopsis of the Loki series? I mean.
I know I can.
Well, you know what? You do it. If you want to.
Loki takes place immediately after his failure at the hands of the Avengers in Avengers. And it is a show about Loki, much like I said with Agent of Asgard. It's a show about Loki learning who he is. And who he is in a world where everything is decided for you. And what does that mean? And what does choosing your own path mean? And what does it mean to be the god of mischief in a world where things are so predetermined? Because the whole thing with the TVA is that they protect the sacred timeline. And Loki has a brilliant conversation with the character Mobius about, well, what does free will mean then? What does predestination mean then? And the plot, if you will, on the surface level is Loki assisting this variant self of Sylvie in trying to take down the TVA. While at the same time, the real plot is this character of Loki bridging the gap between the comics and where the MCU had put him, discovering who he is in a world that has decided for him what his role is. And that's where I think the show really shined.
Yeah.
Was allowing this character to have, similar to Agent of Asgard, this ego death moment of, there's a great moment in the series where Mobius is saying, you've killed a lot of people, you've done horrible things, none of this really sounds like mischief. Is this mischief, or is do you like hurting people? And you have this really touching and well-acted moment of Tom Hiddleston really, I think, selling it beautifully of, no, I don't enjoy hurting people, but it's what I've had to do. And that's the space that I think the MCU has not given this character space to be that trickster element. To be, like in the mythology and like in the comics, the Loki who dangles a salmon over the water just to be a little jerk about it.
Yeah.
And the Loki who has overarching schemes of grandeur that always lose and always get foiled. And what does it mean? This is another overarching theme in the show, is that Loki is born to lose.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to believe you have this glorious purpose, this glorious destiny, but to never truly succeed? But part of what holds them back is they're trying to fulfill a role that has essentially been created for them cosmically. Mm-hmm. That they are the adversary. It's almost like, I don't want to make it biblical, but they're almost like this Satan metaphor of choosing to step out of the path determined for them. Because what is Lucifer but an angel that decided to leave its predetermined path? And then you have this breaking out of there's a reason that they work in the horned metaphor with Loki of this kind of morning star character, that Loki is the trickster god, is a gender fluid god, is an everything, bisexual, pansexual, species variant in many ways character that decides to say, no, I will not walk the path predetermined for me.
Yes, I felt all of that. But this kind of gets to, when you love media, a lot of times because it speaks to you. And I think that one aspect of the show that spoke to me, I mean, we do have, it's done in like as much of the reveal that a conglomerate like Disney will do.
They gave us a delicious crumb when we wanted a cake, but that crumb was very moist.
But it's still like, for me, I know that like growing up is like a closeted like queer person and a trans person, you get this feeling inside of you that like I'm bad and wrong. Like there's something evil about me, and you feel predetermined to like, you almost seek out paths of destruction.
Yes, and
I
that's
certainly did.
Very much something that you see with particularly MCU Loki. Kind of, well, I don't fit in. Fine, then I guess I'll ruin everything. Mm-hmm. And that is also like, I'm non-binary trans, and I really also see myself in this. Well, if the world tells me I'm destined to fail, then I will fail spectacularly. Yeah,
like if you want me to be bad, I'm going to be the worst. Like if that's what you think of me.
And I will look fabulous while doing it.
Yes.
And that's also something I really appreciated in the character of Sylvie, who kind of we're going to get metatextual, in having Sylvie wear the cracked helm, which is the God of Stories helm from Agent of Asgard, very specifically. It's not a Lady Loki helm. It's the God of Stories. Don't call it the Lady Loki helm. That's a specific character from a very specific time in the comics. Anyway, having her wear that cracked helm is symbolic of Loki's ego death journey, and I think that's very important in her kind of eschewing the name of Loki and saying, "My name's Sylvie. I'm not who that was. I'm not a Loki. I'm Sylvie. I'm my own person." Yeah. And that's something that I thought was a very powerful trans narrative, in a sense. Absolutely. Of saying that she essentially had her life taken from her, and her kind of choosing who she wants to be and deciding so resolutely, this is who I am and this is my path that I've taken. And watching her, she's the first Loki that, spoiler, she's the first Loki that fulfilled her path. That she put herself on a course, she set a goal, she fulfilled that goal. Mm. But she's also decided that she has taken off the shackles of Lokidom.
That you brought up like the sort of the read of a trans narrative, and I'm kind of the mindset that I don't care if a media is decidedly made for me. If I can see myself in it, then I'll take that. Like
if I see that reflection, how wonderful. And if cis hands made that, so be it.
And I do think, like, to me, like my kind of relationship with like the femme presenting me felt like something that protected me and kept me safe, and I have a lot of love for. And that moment where you see the love between both Loki variants was really touching to me, because it felt like this sort of love of like you and your shadow self, you and your former self. Like it's accepting who you've been and who you are. And like I think that's the moment that the timeline changes is literally when Loki learns to love himself by seeing how spectacular Sylvie is.
And that's such a beautiful way to put it, that I think is something that in many trans narratives, there's this real push for the dead name, mm-hmm. and you have to kill your former self to become who you really are. And I just find such beauty, and I know a lot of people really didn't love this, like, oh, there's a romance between the girl version, but I don't think that's what it is. It isn't so much as a romantic love. It's almost, there's the different, again, if I want to be the pedantic Loki, you have the different Greek forms of love, where you have Eros, of course, which is like the sexy love, and then you also have agape, and you have all that.
No, that's actually a really great read. That's a great thing to bring up.
It is not so much that this is a romantic love. It's seeing in Sylvie what he was not able to see within himself. And I love the way you phrased it as that your more feminine self protected you. And I like that metaphor. There's a trans metaphor that a lot of people use when you come out, that you call someone that has not yet come out an egg. Mm-hmm. And it's literally that shell
Yeah.
that is protecting the gooey trans center is an egg. And when you come out, you've cracked that egg. And I love the way that you phrase that in with the Loki metaphor of essentially that's an egg cracking. And I can make that a trans joke, but it's also just, again, that ego death sense of self of in seeing Sylvie, it brought worth to our Loki, if you will. That for the first time, the MCU allowed this character to really see his glorious purpose is not necessarily to rule. And I love that in the last episode, heartbreaking, but he says directly to Sylvie, I don't want a throne. And it harks right back to in Thor 1 when he's speaking to Thor and he's he's taken down Heimdall. He's about to, he's off on the Rainbow Bridge, and he says, I never wanted a throne. He basically says, like, I never wanted a throne. I just wanted you to see me. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, he is known. Sorry, for the first time, he is known. And this feels like, the mortifying ordeal of being seen, of being known, and that's kind of something that the show really got into. And that even lightheartedly, something I loved was all the Loki variants. In a way, if you think about it, they're almost reflections of different facets of himself. Because you have boastful Loki, who of course turns on everybody and lets this guy into their hideout. And then even Alligator Loki, which is so silly and so wonderful.
But everybody, that's the biggest takeaway, is that everybody loves Alligator
Everyone loves,
Loki.
who doesn't love Alligator Loki? He's truly the best of all Lokis. But even something as silly as that is a reflection of the playfulness that this character was not allowed to really have. That's where Ragnarok, I think, shone. And that's where, who does not love Loki in the Pompeii part, dancing around, be free, my horned friends. But what was such a beautiful moment was, like you said, having this character see in Sylvie what he could not see in himself, and to allow himself to accept that. And I think that really culminates for me in when he and Mobius hug. That
led to another heartbreak when then, but then he actually, and this is, that's another moment that I really, it hit me hard personally, because when you view yourself as somebody that is not lovable, that's bad, you miss out on the people that are just accepting you as fine and okay. Like, you hurt people,
you don't see it,
completely accidentally, because you can't even fathom that they value you. And that moment showed that it's not only that Mobius valued him, it's that he recognized that they were friends.
It's being seen, and that's what I think a perfect comparison is the elevator scene between Thor and Loki, which they did show a little bit in the show, which I love. But when Thor's kind of like, I thought we'd be side by side forever.
Yeah.
But Thor never really sees Loki. Mm-hmm. He loves him unconditionally, and that's something that's very worth, and a very important thing is to have that character that's like, I don't care who and what you are, I love you. And that's another factor of a trans narrative that I think is important. But even more so than that is the character of Mobius, especially, that says, I know you. Because remember, he's seen Loki's whole life.
That's true.
So he says, I know you, I know who and what you are, and I accept you for it, and I love you for it. And I mean, again, we're not speaking romance, though I ship it, but it has that element of, I have seen you at your best and worst, and I love you for who you are and who you can be. And that's, I think, the main takeaway of the show that stuck with me, was seeing this really interesting narrative of a character being given space to do better. And boy, did Avengers not let him do that.
Well, it's almost meta in a way, because, we talk about the stories, like, there's this element of, like, the stories that are chosen to be told about a person, and you can almost look at these Lokis and other movies as, like incorrect representations of him. Like, here he is finally getting to have his own narrative, where he was used as a tool of, like, evil, and, like, the Joss Whedon joints, like, kind of just used as, like, an element of just, he's a bad guy, he's gonna do bad things, we don't need to give you his background because he's established as a bad guy. And, like, that's kind of the worst, flattest take on the character.
Well, they set him up so perfectly. If you think of Thor 1, Thor 2, even Avengers, Loki wants to rule. Loki is evil. He wants to take over and rule. Ragnarok. What does Loki do when he's on the throne?
It tends to be his dad.
He keeps, well, it's not just that. He kind of has a little bit of an isolationist policy because Thor's mad that he lets the other realms fall to ruin. He commissions a giant statue of himself and he puts on self-aggrandizing theater.
Yeah.
And this is his grand scheme. Oh, I'm going to rule. And what he does is he's kind of a theater nerd. He's a dramatic theater nerd.
Well, and he also puts on a play that seems to center around, like, it's Thor, like, and him, like, being equals finally.
Yeah.
Like, he's just
That's
going through his feelings.
what he does with his power. Because Avengers sets it up like Loki's going to rule, and you think that if you go to in Ragnarok, you think, oh no, Loki's on the throne, terrible, Asgard will be subjugated in chains. No, he's having a party and eating grapes. He's chilling. He's a dramatic theater nerd who wants to be loved. And a fun meta fact, that was the first time that Jeff Goldblum and Sam Neill had been in a movie together since Jurassic Park.
Really?
Yes, Sam Neill plays, of course, fake Odin.
Yeah.
So fun meta fact.
The whole crux of Loki is the timeline is destroyed, that there are all these other possible futures.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of what, like you were saying, that freedom that you hope for? Like,
yes.
You want to be free of the sort of self-fulfilling prophecies that you write for yourself when you have these sort of unfair assumptions put upon you from the outside world. You know, read it as a queer narrative, as a trans narrative, as just an outsider narrative. Yeah.
Which is actually something that in the 2019 Loki comic, so in the 2019 Loki comic, which unfortunately suffered, as all Loki comics do, by being canceled prematurely. It actually, in the final issue, you have Loki saying, if I'm not the god of mischief and I'm not the god of stories, what am I? And he kind of reaches this conclusion that he's the god of outcasts. Which they do reference very briefly in the series in the episode Glory's Purpose. Yeah. But that's something fun that which also shows to me that they have been reading the comics. And it really spoke to me that in the 2019 Loki comic, which is just titled Loki, he does reach the decision that he's like, you know what? I'm the god of outcasts. That is who I truly am. Oh. And that's something that, again, like really spoke to me and a lot of other factors. And also Richard E. Grant in the Loki TV show. I'm a big fan of With Nail and I, so having Richard E. Grant roll up as a Loki variant was just...
and such a great...
He was phenomenal.
That sequence just... That's when it really opened up. It was like, oh, this is comics. This is fucking comics.
This is comics. That's the original. So that's like old school Loki outfit. Yeah. That is just dead on that like Kermit-y Loki look. That is super, super classic. Super, super like Kirby era. Beautiful. Love that. Incredible to see. Also, a little bit of Throg thrown in there, a little bit of Frog Thor stuck in a jar. That was also beautiful. That's another, I highly recommend if anyone is interested in Frog Thor, check out the Walt Simonson run that's where Frog Thor was introduced. Thor gets turned into a frog and he helps the frogs of Central Park fight a war. Hit up me, Mx Macabre, for more obscure Loki comics.
Yeah.
Ask me about the time Loki turned himself into a pigeon.
Loki was a pigeon?
Loki turned himself into a pigeon to hide amongst a bunch of pigeons so that Thor wouldn't be able to find him. But Thor, loving his brother very much, was of course able to identify him anyway.
Oh, he knew the Loki pigeon. That's sweet.
Yeah, well, Loki's turned into many things. An Agent of Asgard, he turns into a fox head is one of my favorite things. Which is very nice. He's a human man, but with a fox head. So furry Loki is real. In Squirrel Girl, he turns into Cat Thor, which is himself in this outfit with a large white cat head and a little Thor hat, and he has the hammer Mjolnir. Mew, mew, mew. So...
That's how I pronounced it anyway. So,
yes, of course, Mew Mew. You know. So yeah, if you're looking for a furry Loki variant, they're out there.
Any Loki you can...
Any Loki you can think of is real now. There's nothing... If you're a cosplayer and you're a Loki cosplayer, you're perfect. You're valid.
There you go.
You're Loki.
You might be cosplaying Loki right now, just sitting watching this.
I'm in a way constantly cosplaying Loki. I have 3 Loki tattoos.
Yes. None of which we can see.
None of which we can see right now, unfortunately. But I do have a very large Journey into Mystery Kid Loki / Agent of Asgard tattoo, which is actually quite sad as the meaning of the tattoo. And then I have another 2 tattoos. One is a bunch of Icelandic sigils, which represents Loki to me. And then I just got, the day after the episode came out, I have, which I actually think I can get to, I have Loki's dagger, and it says love is a dagger underneath it.
Super badass.
Super badass or hyperfixation.
Both. Why not both? What if it's the same thing? I think it is. So, do you have any hopes for there's a season 2 has been...
Let's see what happens. I was very pleasantly surprised. Obviously, as with any TV series, there's things I love, there's things I didn't love. But I'm so excited there's more. I can't wait to see where it goes. It can go anywhere. I was so pleasantly surprised. As a comics fan, I was just delighted by the fact that I didn't hate it, because I was really ready to hate it. But I did like it, and every week I liked it more and more. I was delighted by everything. I'm not going to lie, that finale was very... But that's what good TV is.
Yeah.
That you want something that leaves you wanting more. And it left me wanting more.
And we're going to get more. We're going to get another season.
I love more. Give me 10 seasons. I don't care if it's bad. I want 10 seasons. I just want to look at them. I am really excited for the possibilities of the multiverse. Just getting into the whole thing with the comics. I'm a big Young Avengers fan. And with the introduction of Wanda's children in WandaVision, spoilers, it sets up, I'm a big fan, Billy and Teddy, who are, of course, a queer couple in Young Avengers. And I just feel like they're setting up Young Avengers. We have a Hawkeye show coming with Kate Bishop. And, of course, this version of Loki, Kid Loki / this version of Yoki is a Young Avengers character. So I'm kind of hoping that they're setting that up. I know we have Miss Marvel coming. So, hey, let's see what that next gen of Marvel is doing. I feel like they're setting up some good stuff. We already got Skrulls in the universe via Captain Marvel, which would set up Hulkling, which is part of that couple that I love. So we'll see what happens.
All right.
I think the future of Marvel is queer, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, I think
we got our crumb.
They put it all out there, and they saw the response. They're like,
somewhere there's a whole cake. There's a whole cake that they're keeping in the back.
Just that's all we ask. So
they sprinkled the crumbs in Loki.
Just one cake, because there's so much.
We know it's back there.
There's a lot of straight cake.
The cake's not a lie. We know it's back there.
Yeah.
They just have to give it to us.
Give us the cake. Well, hey, this has been fantastic. I love hanging out with myself.
Who doesn't?
I know. But seriously, thank you, Mx, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for letting me wax poetic about Loki.
No, you know
the public forum
so much. It's frighteningly powerful.
Find me on the internet, Mx Macabre. Talk to me about Loki.
Yes, I will post your socials around here right now. Here's stuff. Will also be in the description. All that stuff. Any thoughts you want to leave us on? Any last?
My last thought is twofold things, again, from Agent of Asgard. There's two lines that really stuck with me that I wanted to leave as my parting thing. Is one where Loki says that I am always myself. And just remember that no matter who you are at any point in your life, you're always yourself. So as you grow and evolve, you never have to look back at yourself in anger, because every former version of yourself was building the ladder to who you are today. And that the other line that I always love is, let's tell a different story, which is you always get to create your own future and your own narrative.
I love that. Wow. I've got a Joe Strummer tattoo that says "The future is unwritten," and that's
very much the same vibe. That's honestly the very same vibe as "Let's tell a different story."
I love that. Well, seriously, thank you. This has been an absolute joy. If you want to make this drink, the ingredients will be down below. I can't, that was a labor of love. So if you can carve a better one and link it in the comments. Yes. Took a lot of effort. All right. Thank you so much for supporting this show. I've got a lot of fun things planned. This is sort of a project in its infancy, but the more support you give us, the more shares, the more likes, more all that, the more of these you're likely to see. So thank you for that. And if you have any suggestions for comics, movies, cartoons, animes, whatever, video games that you would love to see an episode about, you can suggest that as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, I've been Taylor Smurl.
I'm Mx Macabre.
And this has been Cocktails and Cosplay. Heavy is the head that wears the horns.
Mine doesn't weigh anything, but...
Taking notes on lightweight horns.